Welcome to the GED training course on the basics of Intercept Spacer production. This is the fourth and final lesson in this course regarding Intercept Spacer folding techniques. In this lesson, we will review appropriate PPE, discuss machine operating modes, demonstrate various folding methods, and discuss handling tips and related quality issues from mishandling. To review from Lesson 2, as a minimum, an intercept operator should wear safety glasses, gloves, and forearm protection when folding spacers. Remember to check your company's safety policy for additional requirements. Let's prepare to start folding spacers. If you need assistance on machine operation, please see the Intercept Operations video series for your machine type. Place the Intercept Frame machine in the semi-automatic mode while you start an MDI or production batch. You may operate with the mode selector in the semi-automatic position, which will send one spacer through the extruder when the foot switch is activated. Or you may operate in the auto mode, which will send spacers through the extruder continuously. As the spacer comes off the end of the exit conveyor, fold the tab up to slightly under 90 degrees with your left hand. Roll your right hand over counterclockwise so your palm is up and fingers are straight. Gently grasp the end of the spacer just behind the tab with your right hand, keeping your fingers straight across the back of the spacer and thumb straight across the inside. As the second corner comes off the belt, fold the first leg up. Do not fold past 90 degrees. Between folding corners, it is necessary to move to the left with the spacer to prevent the corners from overbending past 90 degrees. As the middle corner comes off the belt, move your right hand to the right in an arc, bringing the second side up vertically and first leg horizontally. Again, move to the left with the frame to prevent overbending the corner. Place your left hand on the third side, then simultaneously lift the third side with your left hand and bring the tab down to the belt with your right hand while stepping to the right. Guide the tab into the tail end of the spacer. Larger units require a slightly different handling process. Gently grasp the middle of the first leg with your left hand, move to the left with the spacer, and fold the first leg up vertically as it exits the conveyor. As the second leg comes off the belt, rotate the first leg to a horizontal position and place your right hand at the tab end of the spacer. Place your left hand under the midsection of the third side while continuing to move with the spacer. When the third leg comes off, rotate the first and third sides together and insert the tab into the tail end of the spacer. If the unit is too large, an operator may not be able to properly handle the unit by themselves without damaging the corners. Larger units of this type require two operators to fold the spacer. Since this may require a little more handling time, it is best to operate in the semi-automatic mode. The first operator will fold the tab up, then fold the first leg up. As the spacer advances, the operator will walk the spacer out, supporting the first leg with their left hand and the second leg with their right hand, while keeping the spacer level and in line with the conveyor. The second operator will support the third leg as it exits the conveyor with their left hand and the last leg with their right hand. Once off the conveyor, the fourth leg can be brought around to the first leg and the tab inserted. Lowering the spacer below the level of the conveyor will cause the corner web to backbend and break, compromising the seal integrity. While this all seems quite simple, there are actually numerous issues to focus on when folding spacers. Let's discuss some basic handling techniques and related quality issues. When folding the tab, it is generally preferred to hold the tab up slightly less than 90 degrees. This allows you to scoop the tab into the tail end of the spacer with greater ease. When handling spacers with sealant and desiccated matrix applied, you want to use minimal pressure. You can avoid touching the side seals by holding the backside of the frame with your fingers straight and flat to the frame. For beginners, it may be helpful to hold the spacer on your fingertips to prevent finger wrap. Once you are able to keep your fingers straight, it is typically better to hold the spacer on your flattened palms. This distributes the pressure better while minimizing the finger impressions in the sealant on the back side of the spacer. Your thumbs should be on the inside, again flat, to avoid contact with the desiccated matrix. Damaged side seals like this results in defective IG units like this. If the side seals are damaged or in any way compromised, do not hesitate to discard and remake the spacer frame. Excessive handling on the backside of the spacer can leave the metal exposed. This will result in corrosion of the spacer and ultimately premature failure of the IG unit. Use minimal pressure when handling the spacer frames. While damage to the desiccated matrix is a cosmetic defect, the spacer frame should be remade to avoid any controversy with your customers. To review, whenever handling the spacer, always keep your fingers straight and your thumb on the inside. This will prevent finger wrap, which smears the sealant on the sides of the spacer. Always use minimal finger pressure to avoid damage to the sealant on the back of the spacer. Try to make the flat part of your palm come in contact with the sealant, as a larger area will make less of an impression on the sealant. Excessive pressure can poorly protect or even expose the metal spacer to atmospheric conditions, which can allow the spacer to corrode, creating a seal failure. The Finished Spacer Quality Specifications section in GED document ES0008 also covers the following quality issues of a folded spacer frame: corner flare from twisting corners, corner flare from overbending corners, and backbending. Corner flare, like corner protrusion, is the difference in the spacer width as measured across the bottom versus the width at the corners. Corner flare, however, is the result of improper folding technique as opposed to improper setup of the Intercept frame machine. Corner flare can be a result of twisting the corners by not folding directly over the belt, as shown here, which is typical when the spacer is too large for one person to handle. Ideally, you want to fold spacers in a plane perpendicular to the extruder belt. Occasionally, when you fold a spacer, you may inadvertently twist the corners by not folding directly over the belt. Corner flare may also be a result of bending the corners past 90 degrees. This is commonly referred to as overbending. To avoid overbending the corners of the spacer frame, always keep the angles greater than 90 degrees until the tab is inserted into the tail end of the spacer. Overbending will deform the corner, causing the sides of the spacer to flare out. The effects of overbending are not easily noticed with sealant on the spacer, but once through the oven and roll press, the metal spacer can often be seen against the glass. Again, the inevitable result will be a failed seal. Move to the left with the spacer, then to the right as it is folded. Failure to do so will result in overbending of the corners. Also, rotate the first and third sides together when bringing the tab down to the belt to insert it into the tail end. Pulling the first side before the third will cause the third corner to overbend. When folding smaller units, placing your left hand just before the last corner helps support the spacer as the tab is pushed in. It also permits your little finger to be positioned under the last leg to support it in the event that the tab is not inserted before the spacer leaves the belt. Backbending is a result of allowing the spacer to bend backwards, breaking the web. Bending a corner backwards ever so slightly will cause the web to break. When folded, the broken web often overlaps the side of the spacer, but may be undetectable under the sealant. Once pressed out, however, the damage may be clearly visible, but not always. Normally, for moisture vapors to get inside the unit, they have to permeate the entire side seal, or permeate the sealant in the web area. A broken web will create a very short moisture vapor barrier, which will allow moisture to enter the unit easily. The web may also be broken if a corner is folded, unfolded, and then refolded, as seen here. The web will likely have broken when the corner was unfolded, but when refolded, the broken web usually folds inward, concealing the damage. Another issue shown here is that the operator is using their knee to support the spacer while it is refolded. Contact with clothing may pick up contamination on the side seals, such as cotton fibers or debris, which can wick moisture in through the seal, resulting in a premature failure. The damage in this case is usually not visible until the IG fails in the field. Once the spacer has been folded and the tab inserted into the end, avoid touching the side seals and mend the bottom material together by pressing the seam against the back of the spacer. When this corner is mended correctly, the sides should have approximately the same amount of sealant on them as the other corners. Do not stretch the sealant around the bottom. This could cause the sealant to become too thin and it can burn off in the oven. When you hang the spacer on the overhead conveyor, it is important to keep the tab on the bottom, preferably horizontally. If you hang the spacer with the tab vertically, the weight of the spacer can pull the last leg out of the tab. If this happens, the spacer should be remade. Finally, if you drop a spacer, drag it on the floor, or in any way damage the spacer, remake it without hesitation. You want to avoid warranty replacements, which are costly and negatively impact your company's reputation. Thank you for participating in the lesson on Intercept Spacer folding techniques. Please review the other lessons in this GED training course shown here.